All right, let's get to the Southeastern Conference. Let's get to the SEC. Tonight, Alabama finds themselves down 39-36 at the half. Nate Oates calls his group into the locker room. He says this, you guys got to be better, quote, with the blue-collar stuff. And he says that's all he had to say. And what did Alabama do? They opened the second half in Gainesville on a 22-4 run. The Tide win at 83-70 at Florida. That's a quality road win. 11-3 on the season now for Nate Oates' bunch. And Steve, I'll tell you what, it would not shock me at all to see Alabama in a regional final at the top in terms of reasons. When that backcourt is meshing, Jaden Shackelford and Javon Quinterly, it's really difficult to stop their pace and their smooth games.
Yeah, and Keon Ellis was great tonight, and Juwan Gary was great. J.D. Davidson, he only has 2 points, but I think he's a phenomenal talent and guard. Obviously, he's a freshman, so there's going to be good nights and bad nights. But Nate Oates' team, even though a lot of people talk offense, when they talk about Nate Oates' team, and I'm a big fan of his and obviously Alabama's, but you just touched on is what he told his team at halftime. His Buffalo teams, his Alabama team last year was one of the top defensive teams in the country. They've got some grit to them. And I think Juwan Gary brings some of that to them, from that standpoint, filling in, with some of those guys where Petty and Herb Jones may have filled out some big roles for those guys because they lost a lot from last year. I mean, they lost some really good players, 3-4 guys playing the NBA right now. And they've picked it up. And if you watch that Tennessee game, I mean, they had to have some grit and toughness to win that game, and I mean, they've got Missouri this weekend where if you're picking the game, you're probably going to think they're going to get by that one. But man, you got a super showdown next Tuesday night in Coleman. Alabama wins the national championship. And we were joking off air, and Saban brings that trophy in there Tuesday night into Coleman. That place is going to be going nuts.
And this kind of reminds me of what Archie Miller was saying on After Dark yesterday. The great teams have 2-point guards. Alabama has 3-point guards, really, if you want to say it that way. Javon Quinterly, Jaden Shackelford, and J.D. Davison, who can kind of ease into his role. He's had some big games, performed great against Gonzaga, but he can ease into being a big-time player, kind of like Jalen Suggs did last year. He didn't have to be everything for Alabama. He doesn't have to be everything for Alabama. He can kind of become that guy throughout the season. He's going to have some struggles like every freshman does, but he's obviously extremely talented. And you have Jaden Shackelford, Javon Quinterly. The defense, though, like Coach said, very good point, because their struggles so far early in the year were defensively. They were around the 50s in KenPom. They're now 41 after today. Juwan Gary is really the difference maker on that end. And I think it's crazy that Herbert Jones wasn't like a second-team All-American last year, because we saw with their defensive struggles how important he was. I mean, he's killing in the NBA. Herbert Jones was awesome.
Yeah, when they last year, there's the diversity, 1 through 4 with length and size, and you can switch everything. It just puts so much pressure on the defense and their ability to keep people in front. But they're going to be a tough out. I mean, they lose. I mean, Davidson. I know you can look at the Davidson game. Was that right before Christmas or after Christmas? But Davidson's a tough. They're not an easy out. They're not an easy out. But Alabama's had some terrific wins, and they're going to be right in the thick of it to win the SEC again.
And man, you think about this SEC race, this is going to be an absolute war to decide who ends up winning this regular season title. In fact, I would sit here and say today that this is the epitome of the case of, damn, you want that regular season championship, even over the tournament. Because regular season this year, you have numerous teams that, first off, are in the top 20, top 15 of net, if not right around there. You've got an LSU team that's number 1 in KenPom defense, best defensive team in America, according to the metrics. You have an Auburn team that I think could be the dark horse Final Four team. And I say that because everybody's talking Baylor, Duke. Like, we need to talk about Auburn in that conversation, too, when they play their best and when their front court's going. And Jabari Smith's only going to keep picking up steam. Alabama's right there with their guard play. And Kentucky, of course, you can't leave them out. There's others, too. Like, this league is stacked. I don't know who the best team in the SEC is.
Well, you got LSU and Tennessee too.
Tennessee too. The way they defend.
Though that's terrific. But it's funny. A couple weeks ago, it's all right. Who's the number one pick in the draft? Chet Holmgren or Paulo Banchero? And now it's Jabari Smith's the number one pick in the draft. And so that's why with so many of these things, teams, rankings, draft picks, you got to let all this stuff play out a little bit, and I know everybody likes to make predictions and everything, but the SEC is alive and well. And there was a couple years back where everybody was, kicking them and,
Yes.
saying, hey, 3-bid league. Years ago back, I remember when the team, you had Kentucky years at late 90s, it was mid 90s, it was Kentucky National Championship, Arkansas National Championship. It's got that kind of feel because of how good these top teams are. Excuse me. And it's deep. It's 5-6 teams at the top.